everyone, and welcome. Season 32, we are back here for PCF5. Of course, hope that everyone had a lovely New Year's. Hope everyone had a great Christmas to be celebrated as well. And, of course, joining me in the commentary box. And it's good to have him back. Sartak, how are we doing today? Hope you had a good New Year's. Looking forward to the racing ahead.
Yeah, fantastic New Year's. And yeah, it's been a while since I got behind the mic for any racing event of sorts. So yeah, I'm pumped. I was trying to recollect all the, rivalries between teams. We did see the McLarens go at it, but before we even, head into the rivalries out on track, I'm just excited to be here. Just get things going again.
Yeah, it is great to be back in the commentary box. I certainly missed it for one, and as always, PSGL never disappoints. Before we do start, though, I did want to say a few words because the motorsport world got rocked to its core very recently, and of course that is the passing of the Mr. number 43 himself, Ken Block. Now, while he didn't have much of an influence in the F1 sphere, his influence in the motorsport world is undeniable. He shaped the culture of motorsport as a whole. He was just such a down-to-earth dude. Had the pleasure of meeting him once, and he was just an amazing person above all. He was immensely talented. He was so driven, but he was also, on top of that, he was just a good person above all. So, of course, everyone here at PSGL extends their sort of heartfelt sort of well wishes and condolences to Mr. Block's family, and of course hope that everyone is okay and gets the time to heal. But with that all being said, and I think that in the spirit of that, it's only fair that almost to his sort of no compromises nature, we put on a good race in his honour. So as we head over to Portugal, Portimao, the circuit of today's choosing, of course back from the New Year's break, and we look forward to seeing what rivalries come out of the paddock. Of course, we had Noel Carmen with his big win in Silverstone, and that puts him well above the rest of the competition as his main rival in Yuki. No points. Big upset. 0 points to his name from round 6, and that puts Coleman in a prime position with a 16-point gap to his nearest rival. Really has quite the mountain to make up. If I was in the AlphaTauri team, I would be a little bit worried.
Yeah, surely enough. I was just about to bring up how Yuki's at a disadvantage even on the team front. If you think about it, Noah Commons had Leo Lund time and time again close by to help him out if there was ever an instance he needed help. Wasn't the case for Yuki that so much, but then again, we've seen him, make space for himself every time he's up in front. He doesn't really need support more often than not, but definitely losing out on points is not the best outcomes for any driver when competing for the title in a league.
Yeah, so it is really just a difficult position to get yourself out of. Now, we do have some other battles going around the field, but particularly in the constructors' sense of things, we have quite the field ahead. So at the moment, McLaren leads, Noel Carmen, Leo Lund, two powerhouses of drivers seemingly, and they are bringing the heat for the Papaya team. 23 points above AlphaTauri, which is the next constructor. Of course, they got that big boost from the early races, but it started to fall away a little bit. Red Bull takes P3 with Danny Cohn just in the racer, and then Ferrari both in P4 and P5 in the driver standings, although that's only enough to net them P4 in the constructors. So as we move forward to look and see what the drivers bring to the table, of course, Portimao, it's more of a roller coaster, some have said, than a track. So 15 turns, 2.9 miles, 2 DRS zones, and honestly, one of the most interesting in terms of, for not only being a dedicated race circuit, but it feels in a way like a street circuit. The amount of, say, like upwards climbing, downwards climbing, in some cases blind corners, it does in some ways feel almost like it has some of those street properties. I mean, what's your opinions on this track, Celtic?
Yeah, I mean, recalling any kind of race, be it sim racing or even Formula One, all I can think of when someone says Portimao is just I've been, treated to brilliant racing, right? And yeah, it's been a treat every single time for me. As a spectator, it's a track I want to be at. I'm always on the edge of my seat, as I say time and time again. But for Portimao in particular, it falls right next to Monaco for me. I know it probably doesn't sit well with some of the drivers, but then again, yeah, I always like to go left field on that front.
Well, that's kind of the nature of the calendar, isn't it? There's going to be strong and there's going to be weak races. There's going to be situations that these drivers may not find favorable. Some people are better at street circuits than they are dedicated facilities. Some people are better at power tracks than handling tracks. It's all about your style as a driver and how you set up your car and approach the tracks yourself. You're going to have natural strengths and weaknesses. So I think the main name of the game here at Portimao, as we just wait for the drivers to get ready and jump into qualifying here, is really just to sort of maximize the track. There's a lot of room that you can play with, certainly certain corners owing to some of the inclines and some of the cambering in places. You can really sort of eke out some extra place by playing with the track limits a little bit. One thing I would be careful of though is not overdoing it, because especially in quali, which at Portimao, fairly important, especially at quali, you don't want to be pushing that too much. You want to sort of be feeling your way around the track, feeling what's grippiest, and basically picking a line.
Yeah, surely enough. And you drew comparisons to, street circuits in one way or the other. I imagine maybe we'll see Super Gaming, just as well as he was around Monaco, be here in Portimao as well. I'm curious to see how the drivers really fit in a track like this. Noah Carmen is an obvious favorite of sorts now, we can say, to be up in front. We see Alpine as well, and as you highlight the importance of qualifying, I'd imagine Alpine is, raring to go. We've seen him time and time again just be spectacular enough in qualifying, but that shimmers away going into the race itself, hoping for it to play in his advantage this time around.
Yeah, so drivers to watch, I would say. Definitely Justin in the Red Bull. They've put out some really good performances recently, almost siphoned through the pack in a almost subtle way. And that sounds almost counterintuitive to making such jumps up the field, and yet there's so much action that can be happening on the track at any one time that it's almost sometimes difficult to notice that Justin will be silently weaving their way through the field. And we saw that a couple of times now. So maybe we'll see that P2, those two P2s, finally be converted into a race win. But with that being said, we are about to head onto the track, folks, and we are just moments away from round 7 of PSGL PCF5. Of course, check out our main sponsor, GT Omega. Great to work with, great partners as always. Use code PSGL for a healthy discount if you buy anything from their store. And as we get ready to go and start to jump into the game, let us know in the chat who you think is going to be, let's not say the winner, let's say the underdog, the one that you wouldn't expect to get a big position and does.
I'd wager it could be McBlurk again. We did see him up in front, an unlikely contender running up in front back in Canada, if my memory serves me right. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to see new names up in front, regardless of a safety car and whatnot. Alpine, for once, if I find myself being partial, it's probably this one time to Alpine. I want him to have a good race for once. Time and time again, it's always been a hit in quali, but big, turnaround in the race, finding himself at the back of the pack early on.
Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, luck hasn't always been kind to drivers, but sometimes the nature of racing, things can happen that are outside of your control, but at the same time, your luck is the product of your own skill and your own practice. So, and there's always a saying that I like. It's the harder I practice, the more I train, the luckier I get. So while you may have those edge cases, drivers really have their destiny in their hands. It's like having, whether that is pace or whether that's awareness. The drivers have got to keep their wits about them, especially on a track like this. It's all down to them. So we are experiencing a minor delay with the lobby and getting up into qualifying, but we are just about to jump in now, and I believe there it is. We are jumping into qualifying now.
Yeah, good to see a full racing grid as you'd expect in PSGL. And soon enough, I'd expect Alpha Tauris, McLarens, and Ferraris coming out on track. And Super Gaming and Alpine, let's see what they can do out of the Alfa Romeo team. Zekas, Justin the Racer, Alexander Dimas, each one of the drivers have had the standout moment this season, and it's lovely to, just instantly be reminded of that. Usually it's a bit of a downer having just 2 to 3 drivers up in front having all the moments, but it's not the case, particularly in this particular F5 league.
Yes, well, looks like we've got an Alfa Romeo out on track first. It's going to be Elfin. You'll see how they handle the track and what they can make of it. So you've got an Alpine and you've got the Red Bulls filing out next before a Haas is coming out shortly after. But Alfin already cooking it a little bit too much of the throttle. Good to get it out of the way. Good to get it out of your system almost before you really get into those later minutes and it becomes impactful.
And as we see a bunch of the drivers come out on track, Tappy, I always like to, debate in the commentary box, particularly how we feel about the track, perhaps from a driver POV. I think the brief 2 or 3 times I've gone around this track in my sim rig, if you may, I've had quite the experiences just getting thrown off the track multiple times around Sector 2. What about you?
I don't know. I've never really had that because to me, I almost treat it's like a wave, and this is going to sound almost like semantics, but if you sort of take into account the camber and the undulation of the track more than anything, it's just one defining trait about this track. I mean, you look at the start-finish straight, there might as well be a small hill in the middle of the track. As Fazekas goes to set the first time on the track. Let's see how they do. But yeah, it is just about understanding the track, knowing where you can and can't push, because especially in the cases of, say, when you're coming from a decline and you are starting to push back up, the car is pressed into the ground. You have so much more grip there because the car is trying to go downwards when the track is going up. So it's little things like that, and knowing where you can and can't play with the car, because that's the other thing. When you have that extra grip, it's so easy to overcook a steering input and spin it. It's that fine balance, but once you find it, you do almost like ride the track around like a wave. It's quite cathartic to get a good lap together.
Get a good lap together, you say, and I think a bunch of drivers are looking to do just that. I saw a Haas get a bit too edgy on the curbs. I believe that was perhaps Racek, but yeah, we stay on board. Perhaps Fazekas will be the first driver to set a lap time around Portimao today. But surprisingly enough, quite the populated track today early on into qualifying.
Yeah, it's about getting
that too often.
Getting those banker laps in, and everyone's got plenty of spacing around this track. Fazekas sends the benchmark, 117.1. Elfin immediately comes in, breaks that down with a 116.9. Is anyone going to challenge that? Barros comes in with an 18.4, and that leaves the likes of, say, Julian Klaffenbach with a 116.9 as well. I think there is a reserve as McBlurt comes in to start a lap. You have the likes of Super Gaming also coming through. I believe Leo Lund is next across the track. No, that Carlman. What are we going to see? It's going to be a 16.9 with the Leo Lunds coming through. Are they going to match their teammate? No, they're going to surpass them. It's a 116.8. What a lap from the McLaren. Looking around the rest of the field, you've got the Ferrari starting to come through. That's Dimas coming in, 116.9. And I think that's the benchmark we should be looking for. If you're in the 16s, you are in a good spot here in Portimao.
Yeah, I was haphazardly looking for Yuki because I might just have, clearly proven myself wrong. Julian Klaffenbach stepping in and putting himself in the top five uh, it's quite the feat. I'd imagine Dima's still up there, Alfine as I'd expected, but Leo Lund in front of no comment. But again, early stages of qualifying, nothing's written off just yet. I see some other names we see get as close as they can into the top five. Kintick's just in that racer. Two drivers we've seen time and time again tumble down the order come the late moments of qualifying. Hopefully, it's the other way around this time out. I'm sure they'll be looking to do just that.
And there we go. McBlurt coming in 118.8. So a little bit lower on the timesheets, but luckily they've got 13 minutes left to make a difference here. Norin out on their out lap, looking to see if they can put that Aston Martin in the top 10. Joined their teammate Memento in the fight at the sharp end, potentially. You got the rest of the field. Jamie Mells invalidating their lap, unfortunately. Will have to go again. We're likely having to peel in the pits. No, they're going to stay out. Despite their car basically being out of ERS, I would have thought that if they knew their car was past track limits and they invalidated, the strategy really in that situation is, okay, stay out, but charge your ERS so you can immediately go for the out lap after. Clearly, maybe there's an issue with the tires, or in this case, this is going to spin, and coming into Sector 2, they are going to be taking that car home, I think, for a fresh set of boots.
Yeah, that was Jamie with the spin, I'd imagine, and Elliot Norin is on a fast lap of his own. Norby, without a lap time, back into the pits along with Racek, Joris. The two horses we did see early into the season have quite the fights out on track, even leading up to Canada. So I'm curious to see how it pans out in this race for the Haas team. Danico, surprisingly enough, hasn't set a lap time. He'll be out soon enough, I'd imagine. 116.803 time to beat Elliot Norin. Where will you put that Aston Martin?
To 123.
Position up.
But it's going to be, this is going to be the lap. They were on the ERS recharge. I think they compromised their previous lap and said, okay, like we were just saying in the commentary box, so all right, this lap is one to forget, but we still got life, so let's charge that ERS and we go again. We're on board with the Aston Martin now and see what they can bring to the table. It's looking like a clean Sector 1. And oh, I love this corner here. Say the hairpin left-hander down the hill, almost like a... It's like just a sharp point almost. It looks like one of the sharpest points on the track and in fact on the calendar. One of the sharpest corners there is. And it is such a ride. You're looking on board here with Elliot Norin coming through Sector 2. Is up the hill to the right-hander. Double apex. Back down to the left. Up again. It doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop here in Portimao.
I feel a bit, what do I say now? What's the word I'm looking for? I feel like I'm missing out quite a bit sitting behind the mic instead of being, behind a wheel around a Portimao. I'm bound to just jump back in and try and set a quick lap time around Portimao after this race. But Elliot Norin, that lap time puts him 11th fastest so far out on track. Of course, he's got more than enough time to better that lap time. Just under 10 minutes left to the qualifying session. Leo Lund's lap time to be beaten, and we see the front runners, the fastest lap time setters in the session so far, come out for another lap or two.
Yeah, and say we have got 5 drivers yet to set a time. That's going to be Jamie Mells, Norby Zebakonyi, Killian Racek, Joris, and Danico. So 2 Hasses, Ferrari, an AlphaTauri, and a Red Bull. Now, the Hasses in particular, I want to pay a little bit of an attention to, purely because, like you said, they did have some early season pace, and that netted them quite well, but they've also had a little bit of on-track squabbling. I think we saw, I believe it was Bahrain, where they did get a little bit in each other's hair. They didn't quite leave the space for one another, especially when they were fighting with some of the other cars on track. My concern is, at least in qualifying, they have that room to breathe. They have to navigate other drivers, but they do have that room. When it comes to the race, if they come close together to one another again, are they going to be extending courtesy, or are we going to see a bit more scuffling? Either way, Racek in P9, 117.2, and is going to put themselves in the top 10 for the time being, but 4 cars yet to put themselves on the board. It's still anyone's game.
Historically, yours is a lap time to get almost ahead or right behind Racing time and time again. I'd imagine a similar lap time from him. One driver we haven't talked about, who we usually clearly talk about, is Momento, who's 10th fastest on the track right now. Incidents perhaps in sector 3 keeps lighting up yellow. I believe that's a Mercedes, just staying clear of an Alfa Romeo. But yeah, Leo Land's lap time still good enough to be the fastest out on track.
Yeah, that 16 barrier is the one you want to break if you want to be in the good spots. Frolf coming through is going to be locking that in. Norby's going to be P10, 17.1. It's a good run from the Ferrari. Not quite what they need, though, to be at the sharp end. That's going to leave everyone in the 16 barrier, but Dimas coming through, 116.7. We're just talking about the Ferraris, and now every Ferrari driver has a 1 at the start of their position. How's that for a coincidence? I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but we'll see. Maybe Norby can get under the 16 barriers like his teammate. There you go, 0.752, time to beat.
Yeah, with the Alfa Romeos ahead of Noah Carmen, one would think he might be fumbling, but he is indeed actually unable to set a good enough lap time. To think about it, invalidating his lap time. So clearly there is a little bit yet to be seen from Noah Carmen's side, with Leo Lund sitting second fastest still, but Alpine and Super Gaming both in the top 5. You'd think that'll help out in race start.
Yeah, I'd say Jamie Mills, last driver to set a time on the field here, as Danico previously went 13th, and it's going to be P8, just slipping into the 16s with a 0.990. That's going to be P8, and that is going to be sandwiching Noel Coleman in the standings between 2 AlphaTauris. Is he going to get himself out of trouble? I have to wonder. But one thing's for sure, he's running out of time, 6 minute 30 on the clock.
Yeah, Julian's going to be trying to better his lap time as well, as you'd expect. I believe Leo Lund is actually in a relatively slower lap compared to his previous one. Regardless, he had invalidated it, heads right back into the pits. And yeah, Noel Carmen.
Yeah, that leaves quite a few drivers out on track right now. So you've got the 2 AlphaTauris, you've got, Klavenbot getting a little bit of the tail out there, cooking the rears ever so slightly. I don't know, maybe he's going for style points. I couldn't tell you. But we've got majority of the drivers heading into the pits at this point. They've got 2 good runs in, and now everyone is going to be on that sort of last second dash around Portimao. Everyone's getting those fresh boots on while they can, and while they still have some track space left. You've got a few drivers who are looking to improve. McBlurk, Kazi, Barros, all in the 118s, and everyone else is into the 117s, and by a good margin to that effect. So there's got to be some improvement there if they want to be in a competitive position. Klaffenbach coming across the line now. Is it going to be good? It's going to be good, all right. P3, 16.838. They're going to be at the front of the second row here in Portimao. And Elliot Norin, fortunately, one of the drivers who was on the cusp of being in that danger zone, in being that sort of last few drivers who are going to have to fight their way up. It has invalidated their lap. It's going to have to go again.
Yeah, speaking of invalidating laps, we saw Noel Carmen as well trying to go for another run, invalidating it again. Fazekas was on a run as well right now, invalidated it. One would think heading into the race to expect quite a lot of time penalties if this keeps going.
Yeah, I think a lot of drivers are using qualifying to test the limits a little, and with some of the sectors of the track almost being completely blind in places, I think it's fair. But saying that, Ailfin, 116.6 in the Alfa Romeo is going to be the new fastest time by over a 10th. What a run there from the Sauber team, and that is going to put him in a prime position for the race.
Yeah, and as you say that, Super Gaming's ready to go for his own fast lap time. Could we possibly see a front row lockout from Alfa Romeo? Could we see Super Gaming remain in the top 5? It's to find out, but I'd imagine the 4 drivers between himself and his teammate Alpine will be coming out now soon enough to even better their lap times and try and beat that banker lap set by Alpine.
Yeah, we're going to see in the next 30 seconds or so, suddenly a lot of the drivers are going to make a mass exodus from the pits in order to get just over 2 laps worth of time out on track. That gives them the opportunity to go for a fast lap, have their outlap, and potentially go for that last minute finish line cross, so they get one more final mulligan. Looks like someone's off track. That's Barros. Not going to get an improvement on their times. Looks like they sent it into the gravel track, lost out for terminal damage. So he's going to be starting well down at the bottom of the field. P18 minimum. And that's going to be a pretty rough spot to fight back up the field from. Anyway, Super Gaming on a pretty good lap right now. Let's see how they do.
Yeah, he had a fumble across turn 3. I'm pretty sure he can make up for it around this particular sector. Sector 2 is the 10th up already. And it's only through sector 3, through the undulations, ensure that he gets every corner perfect to put himself even closer to his teammate or even trump him for that coveted provisional pole position.
It's going to be very close for Super Gaming here, but it looks like it might be onto something, and onto something he is. It's 116.716, and it's looking like an Alfa Romeo 1-2. It's going to be a tough act to follow for all of the other drivers out on track, as Alpine and Super Gaming lead here in Portimao, leading qualifying, and everyone, it's like I said, that mass exodus, everyone's out on track, and just like that, the battle is on.
Surely enough, Leola no common. They'll be looking to replicate what Alpine and Super Gaming has done, but with all this traffic, can they ensure they don't invalidate their lap time? They don't, come together with another car out on track. And let's not forget, Klaffenbach, Steven, they're in the mix as well. No common hasn't been able to sell bare lap time for a while now. He's still down there, 7th fastest off the pack.
Oh, Fazekas going for a lap again in invalidation early on in Sector 1. That's going to be their attempt out for the count. Jamie Mells is going to be following behind, though, and is going to be seeing what they can make of the situation. Provided they don't get blocked, they could be onto something here. It's a negative on their previous Sector 1 best. Let's hope that they can only improve. But everyone out on track, literally everyone minus Barros. And I believe Super Gaming coming in after that triumphant lap to P2 there. I think job might be done. And Aelfin's going back out again. But yeah, at this point, this is the final shot for everyone to get those improvements in. McBlurg and Kaze down the bottom of the field. Noel Carmen looking to get that run to push themselves higher. We've got the mid-pack runners, likes of Memento, Justin we expect, and Jamie Mells cooking it too much on the penultimate corner is going to lose the lap they worked so hard to master. That's going to be disappointing. So Jamie Mells coming in to cross the line. That is rough. That is tough for the AlphaTauri. But P8, still a respectable position. Let's see where the rest end up. Kaze coming across the line, goes P18, 117.789. That's a good opportunity. Joris going P4 though, 16.781 as Memento heads into the pits. Next out on the field, it's going to be Leo Lund who gets the fastest time. It's a 6:08. What a run. What a run from Leo Lund there. Can his teammate Noel Carmen join him? It looks to be on a pretty good one here. Is it going to be enough? Not quite. It's going to be an improvement, but still only enough for P8. Leo Lund has provisional pole. Anyone going to take it?
Yeah, Alpine is 300ths of a second down on Sector 2. I'd imagine Sector 3 needs to be impeccable to ensure he can trump Leo Lund at this final stage of qualifying. He's managed to get himself up there. Super Game has been trumped as well, but across the line comes Alpine. Does he do better? Better he does not with that Haas out on track on the main straight. Leo Lund seems to have sealed pole position for Portimao.
And yes, everyone's coming through now. Jamie Mel's heading back into the pits. But yes, Alfin did make an improvement, but it was only a few milliseconds, not enough to dethrone the McLaren top of the sheets. And that McLaren is Leo Lund. He takes pole position here in Portimao, and he sets the stakes for an exciting race to come. As you can see, the Portuguese crowd in the distance cheering him on. A few winners, a few losers for sure. And a Haas marooned out on track with a wheel currently sideways.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to happen. I had to switch cameras to capture that. But Alfin, as I stayed on board, I'd expected a moment of truth perhaps between this lap time from Alfin, who you could argue was impeded by a Red Bull who actually went off track for a moment at Sector 2. But then again, I'd expected Noah Common to be higher up the order. Maybe, just maybe, the holidays got him relaxing a bit too much. But we've known him for his climbs ever since race 1, in fact. I'd imagine he'll be climbing up the pack immediately at race start.
And there you go, with P1 and P10 separated by just half a second. Leo Lund takes pole position here in Portimao, with Elfin leading up the front row. Klaffenbach, Super Gaming, Dimas, Joris, Fruhalf, Carlman, Jamie Mills, and Zabakon take the top 10, with Fazekas, Kintix, Racek, just in the race, and Memento, Danny Konorin, Kaze, Barros, and McBlurk rounding out the field. We will be back after a short word from our sponsor, and then we'll be into the race. So a reminder of our standings before we head into the race, ladies and gentlemen. Noel Carman currently leads the drivers with a 16-point gap to Yuki, but with that P8 in qualifying, he might have a bit more of a struggle to get that same points yield he did in the rounds prior. Looking down the rest of the field, just in the race up, bottom end of the qualifying sheets, but P3 in the standings. Again, another driver who's going to have to fight their way up. Other drivers to watch: Dimas, Super Gaming, of course, Aelfin, Leo Lund taking pole position with the prime spot to take the race. But we are hopping into the race now. We have got 5 lights on the board. The track is hot and we are away, folks. It's time to go. It's time to go racing, and everyone is flying out in droves. You got Memento already getting a penalty for a seemingly jump start there. Klapperbach tailing Leo Lunds there. Dimas down in P3. You're seeing all the jumbling up and down the field as it looks like we might have an incident at the bottom end. So Barros dropping behind very sharply, just in siphoning up to P12 amidst all of the chaos. Look at that gaggle of cars down in Sector 1 heading into Sector 2. It's almost 3 wide. There's a McLaren. Coleman got marooned on the hairpin. He's down to P10. It's all kicking off in lap 1 of PSGL PCF 5.
Yeah, a frenzy of a start for the midfield, but up in front, history repeats. Aelfin tumbles down the order to P6 as he sits. He's got a half a second gap, but that's a fight for the lead as an Alpha Tauri passes a McLaren. That's Julian Klaffenbach leading this race for the first time this season.
Yes, looking at like a heated battle is about to go down. Remember, they don't have that DRS. 3 laps until the DRS kicks in. So whatever moves they got to make it fast. Leo Lund's trying to tail behind, but with the dirty air combined with a track like this that requires such high-speed grip, it's a tough one to battle with. And Klappenbach is setting the initial fastest lap, but Leo Lund's got that slipstream, is going to be pushing to the inside, throws a dummy, and again, starting to build that pressure to retake the position.
Yeah, we can say pressure all over here for Dimas as well. Super Gaming on his gearbox, waiting to make that jump. As soon as DRS is enabled, you can expect this Alfa Romeo making the pass on the Ferrari, clean down the inside. But for now, he's going to sit pretty right behind that well-ass rear wing with Steven half a second behind. Super Gaming seems poised to make the jump on 3 cars if there's a fumble up in front.
Zabakonya and Rasek heading into the pits really early into the race, and I have to wonder if there was an incident at play there. Switching onto the medium compound, Memento, actually, that's a curiosity. Memento is the only car to start on the softs, which I think could play into potentially an early push strategy, but that really hasn't played out in their favor. They've lost a lot of positions and a little bit of squabbling down the back end of the field as Barros and Danico, no, Barros and Kaze, my apologies, but they fight for position. They're fighting for P15 right now and getting really up in each other's grill.
Yeah, Barros on a fresh set of mediums, getting impatient clearly by these hard runners up in front of him, but he needs to capitalize on every part of the track where he can make a move. And on the main straight, you'd imagine, with better tires, he can make that pass count, weaves to the right-hand side of the track, goes level pegging into turn one, while it'll be that Williams coming out in front, the clear tire advantage, or perhaps not, as he's sent into a spin by the Mercedes of Kaze as he keeps on going.
Yes, just a really difficult situation there. So Barros went hard in, did a little bit of a track extension coming out of the first corner, but they did have the position. They would have likely had to have had it back, but the spin certainly did not help things by any stretch of the imagination. Looking up at the front of the field, then we got Elfin, though, fending off the likes of Jamie Mells, Noel Coleman, and Fazekas, who are all sort of pushing from behind. You got these little micro battles happening at this mid-pack section, like Noel Coleman, Jamie Mells, duking it out right now to see who can come out P7 and make that challenge to the top 5.
Yeah, Noah Coleman's desperate to get level pegging with the AlphaTauri, make the pass, because he can see the Alfa Romeo fumbling quite a bit ahead of him. So he's trying to make this jump count even before the RS is enabled, you'd imagine, come the main straight. But for now, things stay as it is. Leo Lund's lost that race lead to Julian Klaffenbach. Alexander Dimas sits P3. Super Gaming cautiously waiting in P4 with Steven in P5.
Yeah, I'll say you got Jamie Mells, who's continuing to put that pressure on Elfin right now, as is Super Gaming, putting the pressure on Dimas for P3. We'll come back to those shortly. The DRS is now enabled, so that means drivers can start to make some of the moves in the start-finish straight and potentially heading into the hairpin at Sector 2.
Shortest gap between two drivers, you'd imagine. It is Super Gaming and Alexander Dimas. This is a battle, I'd imagine, is gonna last very, barely a second, I'd imagine. But Super Gaming seems to be fumbling it, actually losing pace to the Ferrari up in front. And in fact, the pack, I'd imagine it's the deployment of ERS on Alexander Dimas' side, but that is the shortest gap. It's wonderful to see. It's the front runners with that shortest gap so far. But yeah, Jamie Mills, Noah Coleman, and Fazeka still within a second of each other in the midfield is going to account for much racing action come the main straight.
Well, you got a lot of drivers who are just in the DRS train, so you got a few trains that are starting to form at the front, at the mid, at the rear pack. Everyone down to P15 is in some form of DRS train. You've got the leaders, of course, Klaffenbach, but you've also got Aelfin with a 1.3 second gap, Justin with a 1.5, although that gap looks to be growing. Jamie Mells and Aelfin trade positions as we head into lap 5 here. Can Aelfin go for a challenge and a retake? I will have to see, but they are going to be just as quickly in the crosshairs of Carmen, as I believe that is Barros off in the first sector.
Yeah, not having the best of times out in Portimao, Barros, but I am indeed surprised that Jamie Mills, despite making that pass on Aelfin, continues to have the advantage on ERS. But who's that tumbling down the order? It happens to be Justin, that racer.
Okay, Justin, P13 right now, in pretty good form. They did make a big surge earlier to near the top 10, but seemingly dropped back down a little bit. That being said, I don't expect some big drop-offs in particular, as it looks like Justin is managing to siphon up the field to a degree. Seems to be struggling against Norin, though.
Yeah, Elliot Norin had an opportunity there to take the position down the inside, but he's got ERS. He's trying his best, deploying it, making his way closer to that Red Bull. Up in front, Leo Lund on Klaffenbach. 2/10 was the gap into turn 1, but he will settle with P2 for now on lap number 6.
Yeah, saying just up ahead, McBlurk and Joris duking it out, trying to get a bit of an advantage for one on the other. But Dimas is going to be seeing if they can fire a move on Leo Lund. They are flipping left, flipping right, trying to get any angle out, but they didn't quite have that opportunity. They're going to bide their time at this point as Coleman and Elfin trade places now. That's a McLaren in P7. But yeah, all eyes are on Dimas to see what he can make of Leo Lund. Desperately trying to stay in Claffinbox DRS range, because as soon as he loses that, it's game over.
Now, Prima Barros headed into the pits and has retired from this session. Alfin seemingly got bullied by Noah Carmen, getting pushed off track in Sector 2, at the entry of Sector 2. But that gap between Julian Klaffenbach, our race leader, and Leo Lund has extended to beyond the second.
Yeah, that crucial gap is going to make such a difference here, because Dimas is hot on his tail. Super Gaming's hot on Dimas's tail, so this concertina effect is only going to be compounded. You can see right there, immediately capitalizing on the fact that Leo Lund has no such luxury as the wing opening, and that extra few miles an hour, say kilometers, is going to really play the decider here. Dimas, though, getting a little bit squirrely, and that might open the door for Super Gaming to come in on the inside of the hairpin, fires it down, it hits that apex. These two duking it out for space, gonna be having it as the Ferrari is gonna try and take that inside and ultimately has to be granted the space. Dimas is back up in a P3. Although I feel like with that scare, it might not be for long if Super Gaming has anything to say about it.
Yeah, one twitch of the rear and Super Gaming's right down there in the inside of that Ferrari. I'd expect that to happen once again if Dimas repeats that fumble out of turn 3 or turn 4. Regardless, positions in the midfield have made quite the shake. Alfin finds himself down in P8 now. Fizeka is still running P9, and Quintist, someone who we've disregarded almost, remains in P10, and I believe he's pretty happy there, or perhaps not, trying to close that over 2 second gap to Fizeka's.
It's got an uphill battle, that's for sure, and I don't mean literally. It's that 2.5 seconds is only going to grow at this point, as in fact now he fights out with Joris, who takes that P10. But yeah, all eyes are right now on this top end of the field, as if I put myself in the shoes of Dimas, I'm thinking I have to put in basically a perfect run from this point, because as we saw, just a little shift of the rear is all it takes for Super Gaming to get that prime opportunity, make that charge, and steal my position. Even if temporarily you underestimate just the amount of an impact in terms of your race composure that has on a driver.
Yeah, and clearly that fumble from Dimas and even Super Gaming battling it out with each other has opened up an opportunity for Steven, in fact, to close that gap to almost within half a second of the front runner. So he's in this battle just as much as Super Gaming and Alexander Dimas is.
And down at the bottom end of the field, as a few drivers have started to get penalties by this point. Justin, you can see, getting a little bit desperate, firing it almost down the inside of the final sector, and see, having to back off in a big way. You can see he's throwing moves in that he can't fully commit to, so when he has to back out, he loses time and loses it big. That's Justin's main problem right now, it looks like. He's going for moves that aren't quite tenable with his current distance.
Yeah, and he'll need to do much more if he wants to, ensure he remains third on the driver's standings. And turns out our race leader has some work cut out for him too. With the 3-second time penalty to his name, he'll be looking to extend that gap to beyond 3 seconds to Leo Lund. He's doing a pretty good job at it. It's in the 2 seconds range or not, with the McLaren having his hands full, and the likes of a Ferrari and an Alfa Romeo almost breathing down his gearbox. You'd think that this is all playing into the hands of our race leader.
Yeah, say Glavenbach, although that being said, he has a 3-second penalty. So the pressure, I'd say, is on for Glavenbach just as much, because he knows that he needs to make that 3-second gap up. And he might be making it up now, but that depends on how hard he's hitting those tires. So he's keeping him out of DRS for now, but at what cost later is the question. 3 seconds is the deficit he needs to hold. If he can get it, it'll be amazing. But short of that, he's going to be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, surely enough. And on the main straight, seemingly, is Alexander Dimas in trouble. 2 tenths has been the gap last time out on the main straight between him and Super Gaming. This time around, Super Gaming was closer. He hasn't deployed an ounce of ERS the entire lap so far. So he's waiting for a fumble from Dimas. He's being patient. He knows his position. He knows when to make that jump on that Ferrari, and that's ERS. Down the inside he wants to go. He stays right behind the rear wing of that Ferrari and will continue to stay in position. Seemingly, that gap between Alexander Dimas and Leo Lund has extended to half a second, over half a second now.
Well, I believe at this point, Super Gaming is doing exactly what he needs to just stay in the toe of Dimas, stay within a threatening range, but also recover their resources. You look at Dimas, he's on 8%. He's on his last legs hit. So for Super Gaming to charge up their ERS, then when the time is right, they'll have about 60% if all goes well, and that can not only get the move, but lock it in, because Super Gaming will have the resource advantage, and of course have the pace advantage if he needs to deploy it.
Yeah, you can see that from Super Gaming, but meanwhile in the midfield, of course, McPluck had a brief moment and lost 5 positions. He finds himself running P14 now. Super Gaming finds himself actually, even further away from Dimas in comparison to the last lap. So this is going to continue, as you'd imagine, lap after lap until there's a moment of fumble from Dimas, as I presume. But Leo Lund has managed to keep that gap to himself between himself and Klaffenbach in under 2 seconds, as it stays between these front runners. A humongous DRS train from P2 all the way down to P8.
Well, I'd say if I had to put a pin on the most stressful position to be in on track right now, it would be Dimas, because Dimas has no recourse. Leo Lund at least has the solace of knowing that, okay, my opponent, the race leader, has a 3-second penalty. They can see that and they can plan accordingly. So as long as I keep my pace, if they don't get that 3-second deficit, I'm in the clear. Dimas, though, is running low on resource, is running low on options, and they have to compromise between attacking and defending for Leo Lund and Super Gaming respectively. So they really are between a rock and a hard place. They're managing to scrounge out a little bit of resource here and there. They've managed to get some of the ERS back, and that is going to be pretty useful in keeping them in contention, but just how long they can hold is the real difficult part of this whole equation. Super Gaming is creeping in and coming on strong. This might be breaking point, as Super Gaming, right on the tail, has to back off, doesn't go to the inside like they might have planned, but has to go right to the back of the bumper and back off. That was the big push, and he missed the window. He's going to wait a few laps and then have to try again before the hard pit window comes in.
Or perhaps not. He peeks down the inside. The Ferrari quick might have just fumbled it, overshot it, and opens up a fantastic gap for Super Gaming to capitalize on. And this time around, Alexander Dimas will have to concede that position. He tried, but in vain. Super Gaming up into P3.
I'd just say that was a really good strategic move from the Alfa Romeo's part. They blundered their initial move, and they quickly came up with a recovery strategy. They knew that Dimas was feeling the pressure immediately, so by throwing a dummy to the inside, putting Dimas out of position, Super Gaming was primed to get that switch back down the inside. Really good move there.
Yeah, now Steven in the Mercedes has been in 2 tenths of Alexander Dimas. He got 3-second time penalty to his name, of course, but he'll be looking to make that pass rather sooner than later in comparison to Super Gaming, who's perhaps just getting comfortable in P3 and not really closing in on Leo Lund just yet. He'll be recharging his ERS.
Yeah, so well, he's going to be closing that gap because Leo Lund doesn't have DRS, but he can use this time, as you say, get the resources, get the means to fully lock in the move, as that is a Mercedes, seemingly very slow on track. I'm not sure who that is. That is going to be Kaze here, P15. And yeah, that is going to be a bit of a difficult spot for that Mercedes to be in, especially as they might have the Ferrari and Haas of Sebacognier and Racect coming up soon.
Yeah, a whole lot of penalties being picked up by some of these drivers in the back of the field. 6 seconds for Justin that races so far. He's down in P13, not having his best times out on track. Momento, having started on softs, finds himself all the way down in P19 after a pit stop, I presume, but a 10th to Danico and almost fighting him by the looks of it.
Another battle, middle of pack. Joris and Fazekas right now going to be almost duking it out. Now, Joris in a very familiar position to the likes of Leo Lund and Jamie Mells, in the sense that they have an opponent a little bit further ahead, but that opponent has a time penalty. And here comes the question: do you push and get past, or do you stick behind them, almost farm resources a little bit? I think we know the position Joris is about to take as he fires it down the inside, burns a little bit that ERS, getting that move done, and it's up into P9 for the Haas. Can they keep it, however, as they're pushing through the first sector? Second DRS zone coming up. This is going to be the make or break. If they can hold the position through this DRS zone and into the hairpin, they're home free. They've got a really good gap, about half a second, and that is going to be more than enough to lock in P9 for the Haas driver in a pretty clean display.
Yeah, sure enough, after that bit of a twitch with the wheel for Fazekas out of turn 1 to turn 2 to be specific. Clearly, Joris well on P9. He's on a charge of his own in the midfield. Up ahead, however, Super Gaming remains half a second to Leo Lund. Alexander Dimas as well remains half a second. Steven, despite having that advantage on the ERS front, remains behind Alexander Dimas.
And in amidst all of this, I don't know what's happening to Justin. Justin, they've got 9 seconds of penalties. They're down in P13. I'm pretty sure in terms of the Red Bull camp, this is going to be a race to forget. P13 and P18 for that team so far. Big points of improvement to be made. It's like we said earlier, people have strengths and people have weaknesses. In the case of Justin, one that we're so used to seeing at the sharp end, I think that we are seeing a real bit of struggle here as they're heading into the pits now. Maybe some underfloor damage that we're not seeing, but they go 14 seconds of penalties, and that is a retirement. Race to forget for the Red Bull, but one to remember potentially for Super Gaming, as they are on the tail of Leo Lund, and those tenths are slowly creeping away.
Yeah, it's almost like a battle between AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, and McLaren's in the top 7, with Mercedes in the mix of the likes of Steven. But yeah, Super Gaming still half seconds gap. It's a proper DRS train as it resumes up in front. Julian Klaffenbach, however, still a 2-second gap to the second runner, Leo Lund. He tries his best to extend that gap over 2 seconds, but it doesn't amount to too much. We're at the halfway mark of this race on lap number 15 or so. And yeah, Julian Klaffenbach remains the race leader ever since lap 2.
And you've got, say, Leo Lund, to be fair, taking a pretty good stand there, locking in around that 2-second gap, and Super Gaming, despite closing in and behind, I don't think they're going to have enough momentum to get that move locked in. No, they don't. They stick behind, and they are doing, again, just enough to stay within contention. Frohoff with another 3 seconds to their name. Track limits are not being some of these drivers' friends. We've got 3s, 6s, 9s, 14 seconds at one point was our penalty peak. And that is going to be a almost death nail for the Mercedes in terms of getting a high position. That will put them around P10.
Wow. But yeah, as the fights have seemingly stalled up in front, you could say, it almost seemed like Momento was getting edgy with McBlurk, and on the main straight, one would imagine, with all the ERS being deployed from the Aston Martin driver, he's going to make that jump count on McBlurk, but seemingly has to stay where he is, because McBlurk just unloaded all of his ERS as well.
Yeah, it's that sort of defensive action. People often forget that ERS is a defensive tool just as much as it is an offensive one. You can, of course, have your ERS to make a big attack, hit that overtake button, but overtake can also be overtake denial. If you counter with a good 10-15% of your own battery, that effectively renders their move null and void, and if you can get them in an out-of-place position, you could potentially really scupper some race strategies.
Speaking of strategy, you called it, and it just happened in front of our eyes. Steven is seemingly coming out on a fresh set of mediums beyond P10, by the looks of it. Perhaps even behind his teammate, or perhaps not. He will be ahead of his teammate Steven on a fresh set of mediums, but he's got quite the work cut out for him up ahead.
Well, so you've got almost a two-part race here. You've got Kaze 37 seconds behind. We'll say 32.25 now. That gap has waned, just waiting for the timing tower to adjust here as Norby trades places with them, but you've got a two-part race. You've got the fight from P1 all the way down to P12, and then P13 onwards might as well be in a different category. Not to mention the likes of Danny Coe, McBlurk, and Memento, 8 seconds behind that second pack. So it really has come to a case of segmentation. Let's just hope that maybe drivers have a little bit of recourse to make up some time.
Yeah, one can only hope. As Super Gaming is now 2/10, make that a 10th, make that level pegging with the McLaren, and he's made the pass perhaps even before turn 1. Yes, he has, as he goes up in a P2, the Alfa Romeo, and right behind him, of course, Fazekas, I presume, made the pass on Kintix, or it was Joris on Alpine. So moves being made up and down the pack, and I see 3 cars headed into the pits as well.
Say Super Gaming put everything into that move and just made it work. He managed to make it stick. He took in the information because Leo Lund was already on the recharge train as well, and using that, they were able to get it done, and that is a crucial move right there. They've got the move locked in before everyone goes in for the pit window, because we're starting to come to that crossover point where people are starting to switch over to the mediums. Majority of the field has done this, and really you want to get as much running time on those yellow walls as possible, because the performance difference is very pronounced on a track like this. So you need to get those mediums on basically ASAP. Get your life out of the hards, put on those mediums, and that's when the pace really kicks in.
Significant differences we'll see soon enough, but Steven, he's got a humongous gap, 18 seconds to think of it, to Joris having even passed Elliot Noren, hypothetically speaking, but for now, he's trying to close that gap of 6 seconds to Elliot Noren, of course. Up ahead, 2.5 second gap now between Julian Klaffenbach and Super Gaming. And he'll be looking to close that up. Sector 2 lights up yellow. That's an Alpine stranded, and I'd imagine that is McBlock.
Let's see what's going on there. Yeah, so that was a brief mishap off track for McBlurk there, and they managed to recover, but it's not quite going to be what they had in mind. Fralf setting the fastest lap of the race so far. Noren heading into the pits. And yeah, we are getting into that territory where everyone is starting to take their stops. Now, the problem for everyone at the front end of the field is they're basically just waiting for the leader. The leader is the one that really sort of sets the tempo for the race. They have control of the race pace, the pit window, because the last thing you want to be do is getting caught with your pants down almost. You don't want to be in a position where the leader gets into pits early, and then if they manage to maximize the time, get that undercut and really sort of put you in a bad position, because they'll have warmed up tires, you'll be still on colds, and you'll be a sitting duck. But Klaffenbach into the pits. Who's following suit? It's going to be Super Gaming. It's going to be Dimas, Mels, Coleman. Leo Lund stays out an additional lap, I believe, to sort of capitalize on that clean air of the track, while their teammate is going to head in, and I think that's a good move, not double stacking, because Klaffenbach and Jamie Mels are going to be in a pretty bad spot. Mels especially getting hit immediately with that double stack in P6 now. Coming out P6 actually didn't come out all that rough. You can see the positions jumping about left and right, yet to settle.
That's Dimas in a spin, as Steven, who had an early pit stop, came around the outside of the Ferrari and sent Dimas into a spin as he came out of the pits. Very unfortunate for the Ferrari driver. It almost seemed like he was seemingly on Steven's blind side, but then again, you'd expect the Mercedes driver to be a bit more cautious. But yeah, Julian Klaffenbach out of the pits, and a 23-second gap to make up if Leo Lund doesn't pit, which is highly unlikely. Memento, meanwhile, at the back of the pack, picks up a 3-second time penalty.
Yeah, Leo has to basically pit now if he wants any chance of holding that gap. And I believe, yes, we are about to see the McLaren heading into the pits here. And crucially, they need to come out just up ahead, or at least on the inside on equal pegging, so they can get the optimal line out into the first corner. That's really what is going to decide the race order here. Klaffenbach had the 2-second lead. Is it going to be enough? Leo Lund is on the fresh rubbers. He's coming out the pits. Klaffenbach's down the start-finish straight. He's not going to have a DRS to boost him this time. Looks like there is an Alpine stranded out on track, but is he going to get past? No, Leo Lund is going to come out just behind. He's in fact going to slot in behind Super Gaming and is now going to be struggling to push out on with those cold mediums.
And you can see Steven getting very edgy, gets level pegging with the McLaren. So wheel to wheel almost, but it's the McLaren's nose up in front, but down the inside goes the Mercedes. And will have that position as long as he's not overshot it too much, as Alpine seemingly is overcooking it right behind, but it is the Mercedes up in front of Leo Lund after all.
And there you go. Oh, that's the nail. Leo Lund, 3 seconds time penalty. That advantage we talked about with Klaffenbach versus Leo Lund, gone. That is that mulligan essentially spent. Now, if Leo Lund wants that paying position, they are going to have to fight big time.
Between the spin between Steven and Alexander Dimas and the penalties racked up by Leo Lund and Jamie Mells, I'd imagine there's a big smirk on Super Gaming's face right now as he sits well in P2, and he's in fact within a second of Julian Klaffenbach, so you might just see him pick off the race lead on track.
There you go, say another one to look at. Noel Carmen getting fastest lap of the race is looking to be setting the timing sheets alight as Leo Lund and Frohoff trade positions briefly. Now Mercedes is kind of like really in the thick of it, but Leo Lund up to P3, reclaiming that podium spot from the Mercedes. That is going to leave Noel Carmen right in the thick, and oh, that is going to be another retirement from, looks like Kintix there. Pit lane retirement.
Yeah, that is our third retirement of this race on lap number 22. Just 11 laps left into this race, and Julian Klaffenbach leads it ahead of Super Gaming Leo Lund. And in the midfield, it's Fazekas and Joris battling it out for P9. Seemingly, Joris has gone off track after an incident.
Yeah, not sure what's happened there, but Fazekas is clear, and Fazekas has got plenty of breathing room. PSGL have a little bit of a track to themselves, so they might have a chance to make up some time, depending on if Dimas and Mells are battling up ahead. One person that is going to be battling up ahead for sure is going to be Coleman, because they are going to be chasing down and trying to match up with their teammates. So London P3, Frohoff in P4. Frohoff has an extra 3 seconds, but that's not going to matter to the McLaren as he's on the inside. He's going to have the run. He's going to be burning that ERS to get it done. Mercedes is going to go for the counter down the inside here. And they're going to be on level pegging just about, but Coleman and Frohoff both going to get DRS. Now, is the Mercedes going to be throwing a Hail Mary? No, they are not. They're going to be playing it safe. They're going to be sticking behind Coleman. And that is the McLaren in P4 for now.
Yeah, Stephen Frohoff, comparative to the first half of this race, is incredibly aggressive in the second half. He's really gotten, going on those medium tires despite the early stop. We've got about 10 laps left. We'll see how much of a difference he can make, having been 3 laps on those mediums already. But Elfin is the next driver right behind him, with Jamie Mells to follow. But the ones with smirks on their faces up ahead is, of course, Super Gaming, Noel Carmen, and Alfin, who all have no penalties to their names.
I was going to say, for Alf, he can't really afford to be nice. He has to be aggressive. He's burned all his mulligans, 6 excellent penalties to his name. This is basically going to be an exercise in damage control, because the best that they're going to get out of it in their current position is maybe 8th place. They're not going to have really any chance for niceties, and even then, looking at the likes of Fazekas, 8 seconds of penalties, Looks like everyone's in a pretty bad way in terms of penalties, and you've got a few drivers who stand to benefit. So yeah, Super Gaming is in prime position, along with the likes of Noel Carman, who might inherit a podium from his teammate at any rate.
And yeah, will Leo Lund, we've seen this happen once before. Leo Lund, just staying clear of Noah Carmen to catch up to Super Gaming, because that's essentially for the race win as it stands, because Julian Klaffenbach still has a 3-second time penalty to his name, but it's Danico with the fastest lap, and he's running P15, so damage limitation perhaps for the Red Bull team.
Absolutely. So they've got a bit of clear track, and fastest lap is a nice bonus because it means their opponents can't capitalize off that point, which can make a big difference in drivers and constructors when you add it up. So DMAS right now looking to limit their own damage from that spin earlier on the tail of Jamie Mells, half a second to their name. No DRS for their opponents, so they're going to have a chance to catch up, but they have no ERS. They burn everything, so they need to recharge at least a little bit. They need a good 10% in the tank if they want a move to stick for any reasonable amount of time, or Jamie Mells is just going to come back for the immediate counter.
Jamie Mills threatened for position by that Ferrari, not looking great as one AlphaTauri continues to lead this race. It is the other being threatened for position for a mere P7, mind you, as they go through Sector 2, placing that car perfectly to ensure DMAS doesn't have a gap to make that pass if he gets too audacious, which he will not. He has learned his lesson after the first half of this race. I'd imagine somehow manages to stay within touching distance of that AlphaTauri. I'd imagine Sector 3 out the final corner. We've got quite the pass in our hands.
Yes, could be shaping up to be very interesting, but one issue that we see is Super Gaming has a 3-second penalty. So that leaves the cleanest driver out at the top. Noel Coleman stands to gain big if he can get that move. Ooh, DMAS getting the move very nicely done on Jamie Mells. But yeah, if Noel Coleman can keep his nose clean and can try and close that gap as much as he can to that pack up ahead, we could be within a shot of inheriting the race win.
Dare I say, there's a shimmer of hope for Alfin, even to perhaps get a podium if he can make that pass count on Steven and keep going along with Noah Carmen up the pack. He's got about 7 laps left, just as much as any other driver as you'd imagine, but can he make those passes count is the real question. Perhaps the race will indeed go Alfin's way for once. We'll find out. Of course, Noah Carmen is the one who we'll be watching.
It'll be so tight. I don't think they'll get P2, but P3 could be on the cards. If they can get past Frohoff, they will be on track to getting a P3.
And yeah, that gap between Noah Carmen and Leo Lund is now over 1.5 seconds. And I imagine it's beyond 3 seconds to the race leader. So yeah, it's turning into a game of the timesheets, game on the timesheets perhaps, as Danico at the back of the pack receives a 3-second time penalty after multiple warnings for track limits, I'd imagine. A bunch of other drivers in the midfield, Joris and Norin, could have been poised to get a bit of jump in position come the checkered flag, but right now, seemingly with over 5 seconds gap each, not looking the best. Norby, the only driver on the hard tires, down in P13.
Yeah, and you've got a few drivers who are looking to capitalize on the chaos around them. The problem is, in the case of the McLarens, Leo Lund can't slow any further. If he slows any further, he loses DRS to Super Gaming, and the problem just becomes 10 times worse. So where you would typically see a bit of team play, you can't really afford that here. Leo Lund isn't in a position to yield and let Noel Coleman get that toe. So Coleman's really got to put the work in here, maximize their means in order to catch back up. But with a DRS train ahead of them, I see that being pretty difficult.
I believe 7/10 is the gap he needs to close in to ensure he's within 3 seconds of Julian Klaffenbach. So with about 5 laps left, you'd imagine this is the time he needs to recharge his ERS, and come the penultimate lap and the final lap is when he starts pushing hard against his teammate, trying his best close that gap. But as it stands, Julian Klaffenbach resumes to lead this race, of course, ahead of Super Gaming. A bit of hope perhaps for the AlphaTauri driver, as Leo Lund and Super Gaming both have time penalties to their names.
Well, Klaffenbach really, unless you want to count the penalty for track limits, besides that, they haven't put a foot wrong. They've held firm, they've managed their resources more or less perfectly and controlled the pace of the race to the point where they came out on top and continued to hold that prime position. Ever since they got past Leo Lund at the initial start of the race, effectively that was game set for the AlphaTauri. They really just sort of did super well to lock in that position, and even with the 3 seconds of penalties, they've done that good a job. They might be within contention of holding that win if they can just keep the pace up.
Yeah, seemingly the racing action is now at the back of the pack between Danico and Norby and McBloch, who's got a mini DRS train going in P13, P14 and P15 as they come along Sector 2. It's the Ferrari and the Mercedes peeking around the outside. We'll have to tame that Ferrari through these undulations around Portimao and stay behind Kaze, because Norby still breathing out the gearbox of the Mercedes down the inside. He sends it. There's contact between the two cars, and they were level pegging for a brief moment, but it's still the Mercedes ahead of Norby. And Danico's patiently waiting and watching. He doesn't have ERS in his favor either. Alexander Dimas up ahead picks up 3-second time penalty for himself. Weaving incredibly aggressively, Kaze on the main straight. Norby around the outside will have P12 after all through turn 1.
And yeah, Norby going super aggressive initially, bumping tires with Kaze there, and eventually getting that move done. I know Kaze's not going to be happy about that, considering they had that earlier contact initiated by Konyi. But the matter at hand is that Norby's in the clear, and everyone behind him has a 3-second penalty. Only 5 drivers on track are still running clean.
Male 5 drivers, who would have thought, as Danico is desperately trying to get alongside Kaze as well. Drivers with time penalties to their names, but track position is seemingly everything to each one of these drivers. Despite that, the Ferrari ahead of Mercedes, ahead of Red Bull in P12, P13 and P14 respectively, continue to stay in that DRS train. You'd imagine Danico's at an advantage having 2-lap younger tires, but Norby, despite on the hards, ensuring the medium runners stay behind him.
Yeah, so he's got that breathing room up ahead, so he can afford to control the pace of that sort of mini group behind him. And yeah, so locking them in. Although saying that, looks like the Mercedes could be looking at a move. They're closing that gap a little bit, charging up a little bit at ERS as well to see what they can get away with. Look at the line that just a bit too much there. I thought they were going a little bit aggressive on the inside, and looks like that's exactly what panned out. Kaze coming back in P14, so minimal time loss, but Racek is right behind. They lost in the rear again. Racek is going to get round. That is going to leave that Mercedes in a really rough way.
Yeah, that little trip on the gravel didn't play into his favor one bit. But let's jump back perhaps up ahead. Super Gaming now within 2/10 of Julian Klaffenbach for the race lead on lap number 31. Isn't this exciting? With Leo Lund within half a second of the Alfa Romeo as well. Noah Carmen seemingly can't make up that gap. Can he? 2.5 seconds gap has remained the same, but he is trying his best to trickle it down to within 3 seconds, provisionally giving him the race win. But on lap number 31, it still remains Julian Klaffenbach, our race leader.
We got three-way battle as we head into the last few laps here. We got Klaffenbach in a defensive position, kind of just saving whatever he can in terms of resource. He's got a bit more that can be said by the likes of Leo Lund. Super Gaming is the one who stands to gain 30%, a lot of resource, no DRS for their opponent and a dream. They've got everything burned to keep up with the AlphaTauri though. Is it going to be enough? They've committed a lot to this big surge. They're going to be right up on the back. Is it not quite? They're going to be just sort of capped off at the last possible second, but this leaves them in a prime spot for their hairpin. All comes down to this. Can Klaffenbach hold his nerve? Can Super Gaming get it done? Fires it on the inside, burns every little bit of ERS, but again, not quite going to be enough to get it done. They really only have one more shot at this. It's now or never. They've got to charge and got to get this move underway fast.
Yeah, it's now the gamble on the final lap. I had imagined Leo Lund to capitalize on this attempt of Super Gaming's on Julian Klaffenbach, but seemingly hasn't. It's over a second's gap for Super Gaming as well. We might just see the race result a bit not so in the favor of Leo Lund at the end of this, and more so in the favor of his teammate. But on lap number 32, the battle is on for the race lead. Julian Klaffenbach, the race leader, ahead of Super Gaming. These two are going to be fighting it out till the line, I'd imagine.
Well, the thing is, what can Coleman, who's really the one to inherit from penalties, they're 2.7 seconds behind, so the penalties are more or less moot. All that will happen is a minor trade between the two, even when looking at the driver standings, seems to be favorable. Depends on what the team wants to do, but right now Super Gaming, as we head into the final lap, once again a little bit of Groundhog Day, but this is the last chance to get it done. Super Gaming on the tail of Klaffenbach. They're both giving it everything, but it's not gonna be enough of an opportunity. Klaffenbach holds firm, and they're both out of DRS and ERS opportunities. This could be it. This could be it, folks.
Bit of a twitch on Leo Lund's front as well on this final lap. Around Sector 2, you do not want to fumble on the last lap, especially when you're running that high up in the field. But yeah, I think we can call it by the looks of it as they enter into Sector 3, the final sector, the final lap on lap number 33. Would you look at that? Super Gaming running P2 right behind Julian Klaffenbach, who's led this race for the most time so far.
And there you go, Klaffenbach as they're coming around the final corner on track. They're going to be the lead. Is the penalty going to agree? It's going to be Klaffenbach taking the checkered flag, and even after penalties, wins the Portuguese Grand Prix. Coleman inherits P3 from their teammate Leo Lund, and that is going to be a vital few drivers' points who could be in their favor in their fight against Yuki. Not here tonight, so that's going to be even more of an advantage in their favor. But Klaffenbach winning the Portuguese Grand Prix, Super Gaming P2, Coleman P3, and Leo Lund with Aelfin rounding out the top 5 as everyone starts to get it back under the race conditions, and everyone starts to get it back into the pits for, of course, the podium celebration.
Not too sure if I'm looking at this right, but Elliot Norin seemingly has retired from the session, DNF in fact.
They crashed on the last corner. Yeah. They crashed before the line. They're going to be demoted all the way to P17.
Oh, unfortunate. I believe he would have gone P11. Perhaps not the points, but still, I'm pretty sure he is not too happy with that. But Danico has managed to seal that driver of the day. So yeah, as I said once before, damage limitation on Red Bull's front. They'll be looking to pick up the pieces in the next race. But well done to Julian Klaffenbach. A race win in the bag in PSGL F5.
Yes, well, what a run from them. What a race from them. And to think, even with those 3-second penalties, granted they did get lucky from their opponents also pushing those limits, but they did still execute brilliantly on what was a very strong lead. So they knew their timings, knew the track, knew when not to push it after they initially learned their lesson. And yeah, didn't put a foot wrong after that point to lock in that race win. As we come to the podium now, so joining the likes of Super Gaming and Noel Coleman at the top three. What a well-earned, in my opinion, win here at PSGL.
Yeah, surely. Seeing Noah Carmen make that climb, of course, from P8 to P3, I think he's going to have a treat watching this race after uh, in his own time. But Super Gaming seems to have stepped up quite a bit, hasn't he, compared to the first half of this season itself. Managing to nab a podium around Portimao was quite the feat. Alfin, yet again, perhaps one would argue that the race didn't go his way, but he managed to finish this time around in the top 5. So that's something he can be happy about, will be looking to make up for come the next race.
And there you go, Say. So we look at the final standings post-penalty. Klaffenbach, Super Gaming, Coleman, Leoland, Elfin, Frauhauf, Dimas, Melt, Joris, and Fazekas with the top 10. And then, of course, we saw a couple of the upsets around the field. Now, would you like to hear a hot take of mine from that race?
Go ahead.
I think that Leoland fumbling and losing the position to Coleman was either the most well-timed or the best strategic move they could have done. Because Coleman is leading the drivers. And I'm not saying that this was intentional, but I am saying that it played into their hands because Coleman is in the drivers' championship lead. Their main opponents are not really in contention this race. They don't have Yuki, and Justin was completely out of the picture. 14 seconds of penalties and then a retirement. So their main opponents in terms of points are nowhere to really be seen. Just as a reminder, folks, you got Yuki, Justin, Norby, and Dimas rounding out that top 5. Super Gaming certainly going to getting a points promotion after this one. But everyone else in that sort of bracket, short of maybe, say, Dimas, is really sort of just like not even in the same ballpark tonight. So that key move there has really sort of netted that extra little edge that might prove crucial in the later rounds.
Yeah, might just. I don't think it went that way, but it was a fumble. I think Leoland's perhaps a bit disappointed with himself come the end of this race, especially in comparison to the last couple of races as well. He's been out of touch a bit. Qualifying goes his way. Noel Coleman, his teammate, seeing his teammate compete at the level that he is, you'd imagine he's gunning for even better for himself. But yeah, after this one, I think we'll see a very different Leoland come the next race. One similar to that of the first half of this season, seeing him well in the top 3. At least I hope so, and I hope to hear from our podium finishers today. I think it'll be a treat to talk to Noah Carmen, of course, and Julian Klaffenbach, and of course Super Gaming.
Yeah, we'll have to see if there's anyone coming up to talk to. Everyone is looking like they have some colourful opinions on Portimao. It's a very divisive track for some, and I can see why in a lot of ways. While it is nice in the sense that it's almost like a roller coaster, that gives it a similar problem to Monaco in that it lends itself great to hot lapping and solo running, but in terms of on-track battles, because you're dealing with a lot of cambering, a lot of undulation, it looks like you could be really struggling. And especially with understeer. I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room, at least not on my end, so I believe this may be a sort of very short post-race.
Yeah, by the looks of it, maybe they just went straight on to really evaluating the way they race, perhaps? Because if you go to think of it, not everybody were clean. In fact, most of the grid incurred time penalties. Merely 5 drivers, a handful of drivers, came across the checkered flag with no time penalty whatsoever. So maybe they're working on that instantly. They're working on being clean, because being clean is going to count for so much more come the checkered flag. We've seen that time and time again. And if anything, we've seen that here today.
Yeah, if anything, we have. So, actually, it does look like we have got the drivers appearing now. So, apologies for a minor delay there. But I think, since they... Words are not working. Actually, come to think of it, did Yuki have a name change? Was that a name change for Yuki there?
Yuki? Julian Klaffenbach? It kind of makes sense.
I think we may have taken the impression of where it's a sleeper agent all along. Well, in that case, let's talk to him. The cover is off, and of course, you fooled us. You properly fooled us. I think you say changing the name completely threw us off, mate. So I want to say, first off, now that we know the reality, well done on today's performance. How are you feeling?
Oh my gosh, this race was so difficult. I mean, I was pushing the whole race because the people are so fast, and then with the 3-second time penalty, the pressure started to get higher and everything. And then in the second stint, I saw that my pace wasn't. I meant that my pace wasn't good enough to stay first, but then luckily Super Gaming also got the penalty, and then yeah, the race was going well on my side.
Yeah, perhaps the question to ask now that it is indeed, after all, Yuki, was there any moment during the race that you felt Noah Carmen had the jump on you? Clearly, that there was that moment with Super Gaming having a clean race up until that moment he got time penalties, but you had that pretty early jump on Leo Lund. How did that feel?
I knew that overtaking on this track isn't hard, but also not easy. And then, yeah, I mean, I tried to drive away, and it actually happened. Worked out quite well. So yeah, the first stint was very good. Yeah.
And there
Great.
we go. But yeah, so we were just sort of saying in the commentary box, because you had the 3-second time penalty and that pressure was creeping up. Did you have any points where it was like, I might not be able to salvage this, or were you pretty confident all the way through?
Oh, I mean, I got after the penalty, I got another 2 warnings, which wasn't ideal, and which was my fault that I had 2 less fuel. So I ran out of fuel in the last few meters of the race, and I was like on minus 0.02 in the last lap, and I was short shifting and lifting coast the whole lap. But luckily, managed to win it. Yeah.
It was a solid performance out there, and I really got to say, wow, yeah, yes, the performance you put out there. I mean, you say you were under pressure, but you looked composed as anything. So I think at this stage, sort of take a breather, earned it, and of course, next round, we're looking at Spa. How are you feeling about that as the next track on the calendar?
I like Spa, but I like many tracks, and then I'm not as fast as Noel, for example. But I will see next week, and hopefully I get a good setup together so I can compete again against the win, or with the win.
There you go. Well, it was a great performance out there. And yeah, Sarte, any words?
Nothing. I'm just curious to see how Julian Klaffenbach does next time around.
Yeah, I changed the name for today's race.
Yeah. Caught us off guard quite a bit here behind the mic. Regardless, it was a treat to watch you race, Yuki.
Yeah.
And there we go. So, of course, talk to Yuki out there, say, after pulling a little bit of a sneaky one on us, but that certainly shakes up a couple of my views on things. And, of course, you are, say, bit of a Super Gaming fan, so let's talk to the racer themselves. So, Super Gaming in the com box now. How are you feeling about your performance today, mate? It was great going out there. Really sort of held your own. How are you feeling about today's race?
I mean, kind of like mixed feelings right now, because I was going for the win when I saw Yuki add the penalty, but yeah, I think he needs to sort out his internet a bit, because for me and Noel, he was lagging a lot, and that kind of distracted me a bit, making me lose some time. And it also made me brake far too late into turn 5, causing me to get an extending of track limits, and by that getting a 3-second time penalty. So, but still, it's a P2, so I feel like I should be pretty happy about that as well.
Yeah, it's a very solid performance. I do want to ask, because we talked about it in the combox a few times, regarding sort of laggy opponents. To say, what sort of goes through your mind if you're trying to get past someone who's maybe not got the most stable internet connection, maybe having a little bit of lagging here and there? What sort of goes through your mind when you're trying to get that move done?
Well, it's a bit confusing, obviously, and then it also, like, when Yuki was lagging, it was almost like the AI took over, and it caused me to get past him, but then he teleported in front of me again, so yeah, a bit confusing, made me lose tons of time, and yeah, it's not very fun, is it?
Yeah. Do you think if that wasn't the case, you maybe would have got the win today?
Maybe, but I mean, it's the thing, you never know. I could have maybe got a penalty elsewhere also, but I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay, so today we did see you make quite a few passes, Super Gaming. Do you think, in comparison to the first half of the season, second half of the season, you're getting into your groove?
Yeah, definitely. And also, Portimao is also a good track for me as well. So, you know, and also Monaco as well, but I threw away that opportunity to win. So, yeah, kind of wanted a bit of redemption. So, yeah, this was my best opportunity. But, yeah. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm a bit better than at the start, I'd say.
Certainly put it together very nicely out on track there, and we saw even a little bit of strategic play at times, and I do have to say, using the ERS as a tool to say almost charge up over the course of a few laps, then go for a big send, typically a very powerful strategy, and I think that was really well done personally. Coming into the next few rounds, of course, we've got Spa-Francorchamps next round. What are your feelings on that track?
Honestly, don't really know about that one, to be honest. I mean, it's not my favorite track, but it's not my worst track either, so, but yeah.
Well, there we go. Either way, P2, solid performance out there, mate, and solid points on the board nonetheless. So I take a rest. Well-earned podium today, and we look forward to seeing what you bring to the table at Spa. So I'll take any words?
No, just looking forward to see him out in Spa once again. And yeah, I think things are just getting to go for him.
All right, and that leaves us with, of course, one more driver to talk to, and you, very familiar face in the commentary box. It is, of course, No Carmen. So P3 today, post penalty, P3. How are you feeling on today's race, mate?
Not very positive, obviously. I mean, still a podium, but I did not have the pace today. Portimao never been my track. I've done a lot of practice for this, and still don't have it. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. You can't love every track, can you? Yeah, quali, disaster, race. In the beginning was a disaster as well, with me being hit and doing a half spin, but then managed to get back pretty decently, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that incident, there was a good recovery there. If you had to pin down one thing about Portimao that kind of causes you to struggle, if you had to say anything about the track, what would it be? Would it be the sort of curviness of it all? Would it be the length, types of corners? If you had to lock in one thing that you would change to make it easier.
Well, it's gotta be the track elevation. It makes the track tricky. With those corners, like the generally of the corners, wouldn't be tricky if it wasn't for the elevation changes. So yeah, it's gotta be. That's the most tricky part of the circuit for sure.
So Noel, we've clearly seen you make climbs quite a bit of times in the season so far, but it did seem that there was a moment where you were struggling in the mediums. And yeah, P8 to P3, regardless, the best for some people the best outcome ever. But do you think you found it in comparison a bit difficult out there today, despite it being Portimao?
I mean, yes and no, I guess, but I don't recall much, but I know I was struggling on the mediums. There was just no grip. Like it was grip for like 3 laps, then he just went, and I got gapped insanely by Leo, who unfortunately got a penalty after cold tires. But happens still. P3, P4 is good for the constructors.
It's a solid turnout overall. So, big question. Of course, a few rounds heading into the sort of final third of the season after we come back from the New Year's break. There is one question on my mind. Actually, two. One, your opinions on Spa-Francorchamps, and two, given your performance today and given how Yuki has made a little bit of points, but you've still got a sizable gap, what's your outlook on a potential Drivers' Championship title?
So, I'm hoping that I will win, obviously. But, no, Spa is a track of mine who's always been a good one. I've always managed to have good results, even in faster leagues and throughout my career. It's just generally been a good one for me. So hoping to do good in that race, obviously. I don't know if I will, but I hope so. And I think Yuchi's been really fast lately. He was very fast in Silverstone as well. But what I've seen is just too much, I guess I would say, mistakes, where it just comes down to him making these small mistakes and getting overtaken, making the race so much different for him, even though if he had greater pace or whatever.
Well, there we go. Things are definitely heating up in terms of the championship, and I, for one, can't wait to see it. But there you go. As I say, P3, still solid points, all adding up in the end, and of course we hope to see what you can do and look forward to seeing how you perform on track next time out.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the end, folks. So as a reminder, if you didn't get it already, next week, we go to beautiful Spa-Francorchamps, steeped in history and steeped in the literal sense. This is a very vertical track, very unforgiving track, and iconic on the F1 calendar. Longest, I believe, on the calendar, period. 7.004 miles, if memory serves. But one thing's for sure, PC F5 It's going to bring the absolute best in terms of league racing and what it has to offer. For now, myself and Sartak are signing out, and we look forward to seeing you next week out for the Belgian Grand Prix.
Cheers, folks.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.